Come on, music.
Slow down, you move too fast. Gotta make the morning last. Kicking down the cobblestones. Looking for fun and feeling groovy. Ba da 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 da, feeling groovy.
Well, welcome everybody. Dave, you were going to sing. You didn't sing the song.
Well, you asked me to say a quote, so I was like, I had to think of what quote I was going to say. I got
Oh,
a little nervous.
okay, okay. So have you got one? Have you got
Well,
one?
if I was to come off the top of my head, one of
Okay.
the things that I would say to most people is that stress doesn't just live in your mind; it lives in your body. And if you try to change your life by just changing your mind and not assessing what's going on inside, it doesn't really work as well. So just a
Okay.
more of a thought than a quote, but
So it's a Dr. Dave quote.
yes, right, right.
Well, welcome everybody. We've got a great guest today. From Berlin. He's way over on the other side of the world, and he's on the other side of the clock too. So we're adjusting times, and I would just need to say, welcome to Meeting on the Bridge, and we're on episode 118 today. So welcome both of you, and Luke McBain, very nice.
Yeah,
Your name has a real lilt to it. I like your name. So
thank you.
tell us a little bit about yourself, Luke, and kind of what inspires you and your passions.
Wow, that's a very broad question.
You can dive in wherever.
Okay. Well, I like to explore, I guess, and I like to explore consciousness and meaning making, and yeah, I guess that what drives me on, just to discover more and more and more. To also write about this. That's also something which I enjoy a lot. But actually, I think the process of discovery is the most fascinating thing for me. The journey. Yeah,
So, yeah, you're definitely a lifelong learner.
seems like it.
Yeah, well, that's a good place to be when we talk about brain development and stuff too. I
Yeah.
I was fascinated when I read your LinkedIn profile, kind of your approach to coaching and how you work
Right.
with people. Can you tell me a little bit about that? Because that's really kind of why I asked you to connect and why I reached out wanting you on the podcast.
Well, first of all, thanks for having me. It's great to meet both of you. And yeah, let's look at some things. I mean, I started off by researching the subject of leadership. This is started many 20 years ago or something
Yeah.
like that. My my doctor Vater, as we call them in Germany, said, "Why don't you do leadership?" I was not too enthusiastic, but you don't bite the hand which feeds you, in the sense that feeds you a thesis or an idea and says, "I'll I'll also supervise your thesis and all that." So I said, "Okay, I'll look into that," and I reviewed all the theory, and I came up with nothing. I didn't have really good ideas. I just stumbled across a couple of things which I found interesting. That apparently leadership had something to do with crisis and storytelling, and there's techniques of story to use storytelling also to uncover values. So I was on something, but I needed another 15 years uh, in working in management myself and being in a position of responsibility of myself to come up with something. Because when I quit that job, suddenly I had the idea. I said, now I have the idea for the thesis, which is leadership is an art form. And so I worked on that for a while, on this theory, and it's a theoretical concept. It doesn't stipulate that all leaders should be artists, because that's then the misunderstanding which arises if you say it's an art form. Oh, they're all artists now. We all have to be artists and start painting and all these and singing and whatever, which is good. I see a guitar in the background, Dr. Dave, so I think that's what resonates with you, this artistic experience. But no, my based on it was more the theory is more based on the review of the existing literature and core concepts, which, for example, the landscape is horribly fragmented leadership theory and leadership models. I think there's just enough leadership models for every coach, like just exist. And but there's still some things which everybody sort of agrees on. Again, maybe like this issue of values seems to be important. So everybody says, yeah, this values do exist. We might see it differently, but values do exist. Chaos seems to be important, and crisis and complexity, that and within leadership responsibility, you're sort of faced with crisis and response and chaos and complexity, and this can lead also to burnout and create problems. So that everybody agrees that, yeah, this does exist as a phenomena. We agree also in the theory. And paradox seems to be something which resurfaces again and again. Yeah, I do experience paradox as a manager and leader, and I really struggle with paradox a lot. And so did I when I was working as a manager. So there is some elements where people go like, although we don't agree fundamentally on what the phenomena of leadership is, we do agree on some elements. And I said, isn't that interesting? Because you would find the same elements in art. So art also deals with values. Art also deals with chaos and complexity and meaning making and paradox and all these things. And I said, oh, that's interesting. So viewed from that perspective, I thought that's a neat theory, because it's like, I always say, it's like an elephant's footprint and all the other footprints fit inside it. Like there's no conflict with existing material or theories, not with transformational, transactional theory or whatever, because that's all incorporated into art already. So, and there's other neat aspects to this theory, which, for example, is that and you just said it, Dr. Dave. You said something about, you can feel it in your body. Most theories don't even take the body into account at all. You look at the theory, the concept, the model, and you go like, yeah, this could exist outside of a body. Actually, this model, you don't need a body, you don't need a human being, you don't need relationships. The theory exists, but in art, you would never come up with this idea that, yeah, you could do art without a body. Well, maybe AI, but maybe that's not art. Maybe it's just emulation of art. But for art, I think every artist and every person working that domain knows you need a body to play a guitar. Like that's just, and to make music or whatever. And so embodiment is part of that as well, which I find is neat. So it sort of like came all together. But just to go back to the original question, which was coaching. Well, when I finished doing that, I said, well, what good is that now? Just as a theory, you can talk about it and, maybe devise some trainings around that. And I said, well, if the theory holds true, there must be application. And that's where I started going into metaphorical and symbolic thinking, and also discovered C.G. Jung. And I thought that was interesting because he's hardly ever quoted in leadership theory. Amazing. Like you wonder why, because it's such an important, he's so close to the subject matter of sense making, meaning making through the psyche, and also how important the body is in this process. I wouldn't, he wouldn't deny that. So I went into this area of metaphorical and symbolic thinking, and worked with people extensively in that area of connecting back to the whole as opposed to the parts, to rediscover meaning, purpose, and the ability to come to meaningful decisions, basically. So that's the shortest version I can do right now. So yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. So I am wondering, since you sort of said it was your professor that brought up the term of leadership, but I have a hunch, since you talked about a lot of management experience and, moving into the realm of leadership, that you had some propensities toward that when you were a kid. Can you take us back to when you were a kid growing up, how you why people were noticing you as a leader, or what kind of brought you, because usually you've got some stuff in your history.
I would say, yeah, well, if there's a thread, there's probably something artistic going on in terms of experiences I had as a child, even writing stories and all that. So there art always fascinated me, and the mystical quality of art, to be able to express something, and suddenly you're not disconnected anymore from the object or the recipient. Like everything just becomes one thing at that moment. And always found that very fascinating, even as a child. That's
Sure.
always and that's sort of like it always kept on resonating in my life, that
Yeah,
topic.
sure.
I love this idea of art, and it's really creation, right? We're taking, whether it's you're creating something that doesn't exist, right? And it comes from somewhere. Art is an expression of something. So I'm hearing this leadership as an action, right? Leadership is an action. You act as the leader, but it really comes from philosophy, like your
Mm.
philosophy. And I love the five branches of philosophy: understanding, metaphysics, epistemology, purpose, which comes from your really comes from your ethics, right? So it's like dealing with leadership. How much does someone's philosophy play a role? Because everyone's so different, right? So to act on something from an action perspective, which is more an effect, what are some of those causes, those foundational philosophies or purposes that you identify in people that help you align them with that leadership or being good leaders?
Well, you're absolutely right. I mean, everybody has their own foundational philosophy and, of course, bias, and that shapes the way you see things and also how you do research and come up with ideas. And as I just disclosed, I was always fascinated by art and writing and creating something which is meaningful and has a coherence and wholeness to it. And I think your second question is more how do I then talk to people or work with them? How do I communicate those values or the philosophy behind that? Maybe you could just repeat that again, so I sort of like I can
I'm
follow
thinking of
the,
like the art and the creation, even the leadership is more of an
oh,
outflow of someone's basic foundational premises. So with their view of reality, that sort of thing, and how
right.
that plays a role in how you work with people.
Yeah, so that is quite correct. So they people would have a view of reality now. How to like, and if it works for you, that's fine. Like usually, people don't seek support when this view of reality does what it should be doing for them. Then they usually don't go and say, "Ah, maybe I should be talking to a coach. I've got an issue here." Um, so usually there's when this view of reality doesn't serve you the way it should serve you, then you start looking for people to talk to and say there's something not quite right here. um, and the I would say that the artistic or the artist, when he's producing art, is producing a form of reality, not reality itself, but a form of reality, and understands that this is malleable, that this can change with the next artifact, with the next project, and so on and so forth. So the artist is right on the other end. Usually in management, you would say, well, I need stability, I need to simplify problems, I need to take action on something. So that's basically on the other side. But when you start to you need to change your view of reality, where do you take recourse? How do you do that? How do you open up to other possibilities of reality? uh, and art and artists have a lot to offer because they're constantly doing this, at
Yeah.
least on a certain plane, but also not just on something which is unreal. I mean, they produce things which are real. A play does exist, a movie does exist. It's not just in imaginal space. It has real life consequences. It feeds them or it doesn't. So it's not quite. It's a continuous space, I would say, right? So yeah.
I want to introduce another word. We've been talking about, well, reality and meaning, people with different meanings, and then art. And so the thing that I know works really well with people, both in teams and with individuals, is when I use my intuition. which I think intuition is deeply connected to the artist. You know what I mean? They take what's in them and project it out. And sometimes it's something tangible. Sometimes it's just an idea connecting to that person. Talk to me, because I know what jumped out at me is you said something in your profile about that you take what the client gives you, and then you help them see it.
Mhm.
And I think that that's the art in you, or the intuition. Uh,
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, the artist, or many artists, and I've trained also actors, and I've been trained as an actor, and so I've been in this field of also educating artists and working with them while they're trying to improve on their craft. So there's different types of artists. Some artists would say, "I don't want to know how this works. I just don't want to know. I'm not touching. I'm not going there. I'm just doing it. I don't want to look at it. I don't want to understand it. I'm just going to do it." And they have my fullest respect. And others go like, "No, I want to know. I want to be in charge of my craft. I need to know how to get to a certain place where I want to go." And so they do, all this inner work and try to figure that out. And so what you do, so what you're describing is this pure intuition, intuitive faculty, knowing what to do and expressing it and doing it just like an artist would do it. So you have to bring this into some sort of consciousness, what is actually going on in this field of imagination. Let's call it this imaginal field. And the easiest thing to do, and anybody can do that, every person on earth is able to do that, is to ask, because it's a faculty of the brain. Actually, the brain uh, has this faculty of seeing something which is not known and saying, "I don't know what that exactly is, this unknown future." And that's what artists basically do. They say, "I don't know what this artifact will be like, but it could be something like this." And that's what you would call the metaphor, right? So you would like bridge into the unknown future through metaphor. I don't know. And that's what leaders also do. I mean, no leader is able really to see the future, but they have to have an intuitive capacity to feel their way into the future and have the self-confidence to say, "I can see this happening. Believe me, it's going to happen." And then when it does, everybody goes like, "Wow, that's amazing." Right? So, and it's the same with an artist who will say, "I know what this play is going to feel like. I know what it's going to be like. I can sense it. It's going to be like this." And then it becomes that thing. So this feeling into the future is done through, what you would call metaphorical thinking. And every human being does that, but not consciously. We don't, like, we're constantly doing that. We're feeling ourselves into an unknown future through metaphorical thinking, but you can make it conscious. You can make it conscious by asking the person very easily, "If this thing would be something else, what would it be?" And then an image comes up. That's metaphorical thinking.
Okay.
And so you step into this area of the mind and you start exploring that area of the mind together. And you say, "Oh, that's interesting. Why is it that?" Yeah.
Um, Remember, the first thing that jumps out at me is you use the word self-confidence, and leaders need the self-confidence to use their intuition to paint that picture so that the feeling can be there. Um, and it does take self-confidence. I know that in the last 10, 15 years, I am getting much better at speaking forth my intuition rather than just keeping it in my mind. And then the second thing is, I'm fascinating that you work with theater people, because the power of leadership and what improv does. I mean, if you can be improvisational as a leader and be in the moment, don't be in the past and be present, that's the key to inspiring.
Right. I couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
I couldn't agree more. And I think that, again, everybody does it on some level, but some people might need some support because they feel stuck, or again, their reality of virtual reality isn't working for them. They understand. And just like you said, you yourself just said, "I learned how to speak more my intuition," right? And that's what I'm basically doing with people, saying, it's okay to speak your intuition. And there's reasons why this is happening. Let's look at that. And why aren't you doing that?
Mhm. Mhm.
So if you clearly see in your inner image, for example, somebody had problems with his staff and team, and he was new to the job and took over this center, and he was very upset with his staff. They were like very rebellious and didn't do what he wanted to do. So we started working, and I quickly realized that he knew very well what he wanted. And I told him, "What's then? Why are you so upset with them? I don't understand, because you know what you want, and this is all you need is to know what you want. You're the boss anyway, so you can relax. You can enjoy now the journey into this future, which you very clearly see in front of you." Because he had a very strong ability to envision that and to imagine this future. And I said, "This is amazing. So why are you so upset?" Well, he said, she said. I said, "Who cares? This future is going to happen. And all you need to do is now convince them that it's going to happen." It's,
Mhm.
and he was like, "Really? That's it?" I said, "That's all it is."
Mhm.
So when working with leaders, and what are some of the things that come up most frequently, some of the roadblocks that come up most frequently that keep people from growing forward in their desire to be a leader?
I would say, yeah. I mean, there's of course there's different things. I would say, as I described, maybe focusing too much on other people and how they respond to their ideas of the future, instead of just being self-confident and relaxed and emanating maybe this charisma and saying it's totally fine to be critical of what I'm saying. Let's talk about it, and just rest in that self-assurance. And then I think people will more likely be able to come around instead of being combative or argumentative.
Mhm.
So I think that's not helpful. I mean, you do see a lot of people, yeah, having these insecurities. How do I come to the right decision? And it's the same thing. It's basically the same thing. So training this faculty, basically just like an artist trains their faculties to know, who am I? Why do I have this idea of the future? What constitutes that? Why am I having this wish to go there? Who, what am I capable of? Basically, just to getting to know yourself better, and what is my image which I'm projecting onto other people.
Yeah. Yeah.
And this this is the biggest problem. Many
Mm.
don't know. They don't
Uh,
know what they're
Mm.
projecting.
yeah.
Well, early on, you said contradiction. The word contradiction came up, and I think of Ayn Rand's famous quote of contradictions lead to destruction, and the degree of destruction is equal to the degree of contradiction. So, what are some of these contradictions that come up for people when they're working with you that that you help them with?
I mean, a typical contradiction is always different interests of different stakeholders, and the most famous one is the contradiction between the interests of the staff and the interests of the business. Like they just have different interests or stakeholders or owners or something like that. And of course, as a good manager and leader, you want to make everybody happy, or you want to satisfy all, but there's and that's very difficult. It's totally paradox that you go like, they have very opposing interests, but we got to work with those opposing interests in some way and make it coherent again,
Mhm.
and create something whole and make it whole again. Like this idea of wholeness. So you have to be bigger than these contradictions. You have to embrace these contradictions,
Yeah.
create something which is much bigger than the
Bigger.
contradictions.
Yeah. Absolutely. You said
Yeah.
something earlier too that I think is a key for leadership and for the feeling that leaders need to have. And you said that the leader needs to rest in the fact that they have this vision and they know what to do. And that piece of rest, the team needs to feel rested.
Yeah.
You don't Maslow's hierarchy starts with the human need of safety. And I'm not going to feel safe if I have an anxious leader, because
Right.
I pick up that energy.
Right.
And Dr. Dave talks a lot about coherence and feeling the feeling, and it needs to start with the leader. Otherwise the team isn't going to get it.
No. And again, the leader somehow has to create something which is bigger than everybody in the room. Like that's the, and to be honest, it sounds, first of all, it sounds daunting, but I think in those positions, those people usually are able to do that.
Mm,
But they have to be aware of what they're doing and what they're creating in that moment. But you can help. That's part of this help which you give them, to say, create something which is bigger than all these interests, where all these interests fit into what vision you have, and everybody feels like, yeah, I could be part of that. I could
yeah.
see myself there.
Mhm.
That's fine. I'm at home in that vision. And I had a leader like that, I had a manager like that, where we worked under very difficult circumstances. This guy was amazing because like he really believed in what he was saying. Like he was saying, like, we got to work on this. This is bigger than all of us. He didn't say this in these terms, but
Mhm.
along those lines. And every time you talked to him, you felt like, yeah, actually, my little qualms or my little spats with this guy or this person, they're irrelevant. We are working on something really important here. He's right. I can step back now a little bit and relax again. It's not that important, our little quibble here with whatever.
Sure.
Yeah. So,
Yeah, that, and it's sort of like that. It reminds me of teaching. Good teachers don't give people information; they inspire, and good leaders
right.
inspire. And that
Yeah.
takes being. I mean, that's why I love improv so much, because you have to be there in the moment. You have to capture, embrace that moment, not yesterday's moment. You do need to throw it into the future, but you know,
Yeah. And all that is contradictory to the way leadership is
yeah,
taught and management is taught, and any technical field is actually taught, is taught in a rational way, where you say, if I do this, this happens. So, but I'm doing that. Why is it not happening? Or I'm actually right, and this other person is wrong. Why can't he see that? That's so obvious. Like, and it's because it's not about that. Leadership is not about this.
mhm,
Like your technical field as an engineer or a medical doctor, for sure, it's about that. You know, your technical knowledge. But the leadership part is not about that.
no,
It's actually the other side. It's again something,
yeah,
as you
artistic.
say, artistic, being in the moment,
Yeah,
like, and trusting the moment, as opposed to all the 20 years of knowledge
mhm,
which you have. It's so difficult for some people to say, okay, I got to let go of that, just be in the moment,
yeah,
trust it. And that's why, how I will inspire people, lead people, get them to trust me. Of course, they trust you if you know what you're talking about. That's part of it,
yeah,
but it's often not enough.
right. No,
It's not
How
enough. Yeah.
how
usually,
important is clarifying purpose and creating mission statements if it's in a business? I know in our practice we used to have a huddle before each, in the morning and the evening, in the afternoon, and we would literally read aloud our mission statement, because there was a lot less confusion because it was our mission, right? So if you're either on mission or you're not on the mission, right? It's there's not so much no one gets confused. We can always go back to what we just said every day, twice a day. This is our mission. So how do you work with people to do that, to clarify that purpose and then create that mission, either personal mission statements or mission statement for the business?
Yeah, I mean, this is very interesting. The mission statement. I mean, it's sort of, it is a, I would say, congealed form of purpose. Very important. And I always said, like, it's like a, I wouldn't compare it to a project plan. I'm not saying that, but it's more like a script, where you say, when you make a movie, you say, like, okay, we need a script. We need to know where we're going, what the purpose is of what we're doing. But that's not where the actual music is happening. Or like, you need your score, because you always see your guitar. We need the score. We need to know where we're going, how we're going to play together. But it's still not the music. So, well, I think this is a good thing to do, and I would applaud people to always go back to the mission statement if they're somehow confused, and go like, why are we actually here? What are we doing? Let's read again the mission statement. I think that's good to remind you, why are we actually here? You still have to breathe life into it. And that's, let's say, that's where most of the coaching work then happens, to say,
mm,
okay, how do I make it come alive? How do I embody this mission? What has the mission got to do with me as a leader anyway? Am I just doing this because I'm good at my job? Or do I see things and go like, this is amazing, guys. All
mhm,
these opportunities I see here, you know? So I think it's, what you're pointing out is, you got to have your basics down. That's how I would say the mission statement works. But then you gotta like use it as a runway to lift off
Mm.
and start flying, you know, and working from the moment. And have courage to express it. Yeah.
Yeah, and I believe that that rolling goal, I call it, is very important. But the next very important piece is the community, the people you're working with. And as the leader and as a member of the team, we need to know each other well. We have to really be able to feel safe to make a mistake, to, and really get in. And that's where the human spark comes in. And it's motivational to, Parker Palmer says, know your students well. And when I'm a leader, my team they're my students.
Right.
And I think that's an important piece. Jung talks about that too. I mean, just that human element that's so important. You can't go anywhere without it. Um, and it kind of makes it a better circle when we are really communicating. We're really there. And I really get what you're saying. And if I don't get what you say, I have permission to say so. Tell me more about that.
Mhm. That was a question for me. I thought you were
Oh,
like
no, I'm just
role
expanding.
playing the.
This is I love the conversation talking about leadership and art and
Yeah.
and how, and humanness and how it all folds together. Very important.
Yeah.
I think Jung talks a lot about like the conflicts clarify. So it's like conflicts are annoying and nobody wants them. But the truth is, what you gain from the conflict is really you're clarifying, that mission, clarifying. And I think the mistakes and the problems that come up really are a phenomenal way to grow.
Yeah.
Mm.
If the leader knows how to, ego aside, adapt and maybe shift the mission at times and be open to, revisiting the mission with the team. And I think having that buy-in, if you can, with the people you lead on some level, not that you're open to every suggestion, but it's important to have that, I think. And I think those conflicts,
Mhm.
whether we like them or not, we mostly don't, are very
Mm.
clarifying in our life and in our business and in the world.
I love that. I heard it said once, and I don't know who said it, is that conflict is the gateway to intimacy. And if we can straightforwardly engage in
Conflict.
conflict, we get to know each other on a different level. So
Yeah. It's like these conflicts are, and the underlying animosity which is bubbling up in that conflict is a kind of energy, untapped energy in many cases, which you can, if you are able to, you can transform this into something very productive,
yeah,
right? And you can also then transform this relationship into something very productive. But it's difficult because,
yes,
Dr. Dave, as you said, nobody likes experiencing that. Like nobody likes conflict. So as soon as you get it, you go like, okay, I better not.
yeah,
But actually, as a leader, you go like, you should go more like, this is interesting. Something important is happening right now with me. Let's look at. I got to look at this. This guy is interested. He's getting under my skin. Why is that happening?
yeah,
Something important is going on at this moment, and that's not easy. I mean, maybe for a very seasoned leader, that you can see very seasoned people who are very deeply relaxed. They're
mhm,
capable of doing that. They can see it happening, and they can start working with it. Other people cannot, so they need a coach to help
yeah,
them through
mhm,
that and say,
yeah,
"Well, why are you getting upset? What's going
yeah.
on here?" And
Facilitate. Well, and the brain, we go right into fight or flight depending on our family of origin with conflict. So we've got to somehow move that beyond our amygdala into
Mhm.
possibly our prefrontal cortex. But from there, maybe we can move it into our heart and really start to deeply understand that person so that person can feel seen and heard, not just dismissed.
And we're also back to the subject of art again, because
Yeah,
of course you have cathartic experiences and Aristotelian poetics, which describes this arc, the antagonist protagonist arc, and basically that's what's happening. Like
mhm,
that's why this storytelling structure is immortal, basically, because it's part of our existence. We
yeah,
experience it.
yeah,
Everybody experience, and the problem is leaders experience it more than others. Like they experience actually more conflict than somebody like me who's now a freelancer. And I mean, I experience, but I don't like. It's like as if the complexity somehow and the number of people you're dealing with automatically amplifies the possibility to meet your antagonist.
yeah,
It's almost inevitable that you will meet your antagonist, and even more than once, not one but several antagonists, because again, reality is super complex. We have a reduced version of it in our minds. And then we meet somebody who doesn't fit into that, who doesn't share our value system, brings something else to the table, has a different opinion, and there he is, the antagonist.
yeah.
And now you gotta, what are you gonna do with this person now? What do if you can't get rid of him or her or whatever? So the only way is to learn from that,
That's
to
beyond.
rise up to that occasion and understand, what is this person embodying that I so much don't like?
Yeah,
Why don't I like
why
that?
am I running?
Can't I just make it my own? Like I had that also happen in my own work, where I was working as a manager, and I really despised this other manager who was such a show off, always came into the room and presented himself as this grand. And then I realized, I want to be this guy. I want to come into a room and start just, showing off. And here am I. Like, and I realized maybe it would be good if I started to be more like him. Maybe I can learn something from that. And so my antagonism sort of like got smaller, and I
Sure.
sort of incorporated some of his
Yeah,
qualities, and it was a good thing.
such the
Yeah.
love. So, Luke, if you were to give a burgeoning leader one piece of advice, what might you tell them?
Get to know yourself. Know
Yeah,
who you are.
yeah, absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. So we're going to start to close, and we kind of end by asking, what is one takeaway from this conversation for you today? And Luke, we'll start with you.
My takeaway is that there's so many perspectives on this, and it's always good for me to be with other people to have a different perspective and to also take away something from that. So
Yeah.
I'm glad to be here. Yeah.
Oh, thank you. Dr. Dave, what is a takeaway for you?
I love leadership as an art form, as an expression, and that it can change. And I also sense the idea of life really happening for us instead of to us. And just that shift of process and thought puts us in a much more receptive place. And I just love the conversation and just I just love looking at life as art, as a creation, as we move forward, an expression of ourself and finding our true self. And that's the expression.
Mhm.
And sometimes that's hard, especially when we're comparing to people around us. But a true leader does a lot less of that, and does more introspective because,
Yeah.
yeah, that's what I learned today. So thank you, Luke.
Thank
Um,
you.
yeah, I am taking away the fact that it really comes back to what you started with, Luke, about your curiosity, about things, everything. You're always
Yeah.
learning, and how wonderfully that goes into both art and science, whatever it is we're working on. And it's inspirational. That's what keeps life inspirational.
Mhm.
And I think that just recently, the word inspiration has become one of my favorite feeling words. I like to feel inspired. So,
Yeah.
yeah. So, Luke, thank you so much for ending your day with us today, or wherever the end of your day. And we'd love to have you back again. And we'll talk soon. I'm going to close the recording off, but if you hang on for just a second, I have one more debrief for us.